Welcome to Setting the Stage. I'm Brooke Savage. Orlando Fringe Fest is in its second week. One of the shows you could catch there is called The Magic Castle Still Stands. And today we're speaking to the writer behind the show, Vanessa Francis. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Brooke.
I love having you here because oftentimes I speak to actors, so I'm excited to hear from a writer and a playwright behind a show.
Yes, thank you.
So first, tell us about yourself. Where are you from?
Yeah, born in Boston, Massachusetts, but have spent most of my life in Florida, so I call myself an honorary Floridian at this point. If you're here for over 20 years, I feel like I can take that title.
Absolutely. Where in Central Florida did you grow up?
I started in Celebration, Florida, and then spent middle through high school in Lake Nona, so over on the new side by the airport.
Awesome. And tell us, how did you get into writing?
It's actually an interesting story. In my freshman year of high school, I was in an advanced theater class, and my theater professor told me she wanted us to write a Greek tragedy, and I got really into the idea of like writing a full Greek tragedy and having like full sets and costumings, even though it was just a simple school assignment. It didn't have to be nearly as complicated as I was making it. But once I put on that production, I kind of fell in love with making art through writing and playwriting as a medium. I'd never experienced that before, and she approached me afterwards and she's like, I think you should start playwriting for thespians next year. I was really excited by the idea, so I started doing it, and I won Best in Show twice in my high school years, and then I've just kind of been writing plays on and off ever since.
That is so cool. I love how sometimes it just takes a high school class to spark your interest in something.
So simple, yeah, just a moment like that.
And tell us about your show, The Magic Castle Still Stands. What's it about?
Yeah, it is a coming-of-age story that takes place on a train ride from Savannah, Georgia to New York City. The show follows Harvey on her journey interacting with a different cast of characters, and Harvey's confronted with both her past and future at the same time. And it's a really interesting look and kind of surrealist take on the idea of coming into yourself and coming into adulthood.
And what inspired you to write the show? I know you told me it all started with a trip to Maryland.
Yeah, my best friend lives in rural Maryland, and it was February 2021, so we were still in the thick of COVID. I had just been laid off from my first big corporate position, and I was just on a whim, and I was like, I really want to get out of the city for a little bit, see something new, and travel a little bit. So I rode an Amtrak from Winter Park all the way up to Baltimore, where she picked me up and drove me to rural Maryland. And as we were on the train up north, we had an emergency stop on the train tracks, and we were stranded for 5.5 hours. And as I was sitting there, the gears kind of started turning in my head, and I was like, this is a really interesting show premise, just the idea of a bunch of people coming together, stuck in a train cabin. How do these different personalities of strangers kind of interact in a confined space?
Wow, I love that. You're in an emergency. You're thinking creatively.
It was when you have 5 hours to kill and nothing's happening. You can't get off the train. You can't go anywhere. Wi-Fi's down because if the train's not on, the electricity's not going. We're just sitting there. I was like, okay, well, if I have nothing else to do, maybe I'll creative brainstorm instead of just sitting here twiddling my thumbs.
Did you start jotting down notes?
I was.
On your
yeah.
phone?
No, I had my pen and paper journal, and I flipped it open. And I was like, the train premise, coming of age story, stranded on a train, Amtrak. Just all the notes kind of came together, and I before I knew it, I was drawing a crazy Venn diagram of tying all these different things together.
So how long did it take for you to put together the show? Tell us about that process.
Yeah, when I got to Maryland, eventually, after the train started up again, we reached Maryland. I wrote the show, the first draft, in probably 4.5 days, but then I was editing the show for 2.5 years after that first draft was written. So plays, I feel like it's very different than writing a novel or something where it's just it's lots and lots of long, heavy text. Once you've written your first draft of a play, you can kind of look at it as an observer really quickly, read through it, and then, I didn't like this dialogue, or I don't know if this scene carried as well as I would like it to. But yeah, no, I sat on it over and over again. There's probably 6 to 12 different renditions of the show, I think, that were crafted over the 2 years until I was like, all right, I'm locking this script in. This is what I'm satisfied with.
And do you have other people look at it, or do you have someone like do you have people reading the dialogue? How do you get a feel for when it's time to re-edit and go back?
Yeah, no, I usually start myself with the first read, and I'll read out loud for every character, and I'm like, in my head this line makes sense, but when I'm reading it out loud, this sounds a little wonky. And once I'm like, I've basically beaten it to death at this point where I'm like, okay, I've read this 30 times. I think I need a different set of eyes to be on it. I'll pass it along to like my close friends that they are actors or playwrights or just people not involved in it at all. Just, hey, you as a potential audience member, how does this dialogue land for you? Where does this story take you? And I collect my notes, synthesize those notes, go back, and then jump in to start editing the next version of the script.
Got it. And what is the main message of the show, and how do you relate to it? Is there a magic castle, or is that like symbolic?
Magic castle, I think, is definitely symbolic. In the show, it represents, my goodness, it's kind of based off of a real place here in Orlando. There was a place in Kissimmee, and it was an orchid cellar. It was like a big orchid nursery. And it existed here in the early 2000s, and I believe it closed in 2014. Our main character, Harvey, loves orchids. It's like a really big symbol within the show. And the Magic Castle is that orchid world building where like a lot of her childhood self was kind of formulated and where she kind of came into her own and spent a lot of time with one of her best friends. I would say that the main message of the show is just coming into yourself and realizing you have to synthesize the parts of your past that may have been more difficult or challenging with the present and future you to kind of become whole and step forward into yourself as an adult.
And is that a reflection of you as well? Do you relate to that message?
I do, yeah. I wrote the show when I was 22, that first draft, and I think after my career was kind of changing and the world was still shut down, I was like, I don't know who I am yet. Maybe this will speak to other people the way it's kind of spoken to me.
Absolutely, yeah. You definitely feel that way in your early 20s.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part of the show?
Oh my goodness. I would say the dynamic between my two actors that play Harvey and Iris is incredible. Amelia Bryant plays Harvey, and then Victoria Lobdell plays Iris. Watching the two of them interact on stage and really bring these two characters that existed in my head for 3 years to life on stage is so rewarding and just wonderful.
And what did it mean to you when you found out your first show is going to be part of Orlando Fringe Fest, where it's not like you just have one show, it's several shows?
Yeah, it was surreal. I remember I was live streaming the lottery on my computer, making dinner back in December when they pulled the lottery results. I remember standing in the kitchen and I heard my show name get called, and I just froze. I was like, oh, I guess this is actually going to happen. This isn't just something that I've dreamed about. Now it's real, and getting to do 5 shows across the length of the festival has just been so exciting.
And so did you, at that moment, were you like, oh, I have to audition people, or was that already settled?
I had in mind the two people that I wanted to play Harvey and Iris. I know Victoria and Amelia personally, and I was like, if I'm going to put anyone in these two roles specifically, it's going to be you two. The whole rest of the cast all auditioned at Fringe open auditions, and I cast everybody else in the show from those auditions.
So how does that work? So Fringe has open auditions for all the different shows that people are putting on?
Yep, yeah, and actors come in, they sing a little bit from a musical, and then they do a short monologue, and if you like the actor and think they'd be a good fit for your show, you can pull their information and contact them and see if they're interested in being part of your show.
And what if you and someone else are interested in the same actor, or some people in several shows?
Yeah, actually, one person in our show, Janelli, she's actually in another show as well. So Fringe is usually pretty good about separating the schedules enough where like actors can do probably, I wouldn't say more than 2 shows. It might get a little bit chaotic, but we do share Janelli with another show, and she's wonderful.
And so you've already had a few performances. What is some of the feedback you received from it?
Yeah, when I'm backstage, I sat in the audience for our first show, but the last 2 shows I've hung behind the curtain a little bit just to kind of listen to the show and kind of listen to the audience a little bit more than be immersed in the world that we've created. Lots of tears. I hear lots of tears, which is great. As a writer, it's always kind of rewarding to see that the emotional moments of your script are landing with with different people. But we've gotten a lot of feedback about just how people have connected the growth in Harvey across the show with their own growth and, you know, maybe their own overcoming of trauma or difficult situations in their lives. So that's been really rewarding to see that it's stuck with people.
I love that. And what is next after Fringe Fest? Your show is launching. Now what?
Yeah, I am also an author, so I'm working on my first full-length novel. It's a speculative fiction novel. I put out a collection of short stories last year, but this is my first full-length book. So that's next, and then Amelia Bryant, who plays Harvey, her and I are also starting a production company, so hopefully we can kick some more of these shows off and down the road and just, you know, keep creating.
That's exciting, and that's going on with your because you have a full-time job as well?
I do, yeah. No, I am a communications director for a clean energy company.
So how do you balance all of that?
Lots of, I always call it like micro scheduling. It's like, all right, I have a 30-minute block here and another 30-minute block here, and okay, I have an hour that I can like take lunch, sit outside, decompress, and then I'm gonna come back in. I have 45 minutes for this. Yeah, no, I think really breaking up my time has been the only way that I've been able to do it all. But I don't know, it's all things that I love so dearly, so it feels rewarding and worth it, even if it's a little bit chaotic and busy in the process of it.
That's what I'm hearing about actors and artists. They've loved it so much, even when they have full-time jobs, they make space for it.
Yeah, I think if you're passionate about something and you really want to see it come to fruition, you find the time to balance, even as challenging as it is. Like there's been a lot of sleepless nights, there's been a lot of really late nights, super early mornings, but you know, at the end of the day, when you get to sit back and see the thing that you've worked so hard to create actually come to fruition, it's completely worth it.
And so what about the Magic Castle Still Stands? Like, do you think you're going to try to keep that going a little longer? Because it'd be kind of sad if you did 5 shows and you're like,
then
oh wow, it's already over.
Yeah, no, Amelia and I have been talking about it a lot, you know, bringing it out to different fringe festivals across the U.S. and seeing if we can get some placements in other cities and just continue to build traction for the show, and then potentially adapting it into maybe a short film or something and transitioning it from stage to film instead.
Okay, so it's not over yet.
It's not over yet. It's not over yet. We have 2 more shows as of today, but you know, after that, hopefully some others in other places around the U.S.
Awesome. Do you have anything else you want to bring up about the show?
Yeah, I hope that as people come to see it, they, you know, kind of are confronted with the ability to reflect and kind of look back at their own lives. And I don't know, I think your early 20s is such a specific period of time in your life, and there's so much change and so much turbulence as you're coming into yourself and your career and your life and who you are as an adult and not just a either college student or a teenager. And I don't know, I think we've all lived through that. We've all lived through that weird transitionatory phase of like breaking cycles of your life and breaking cycles of youth and coming into adulthood. So I really hope people take that away from our show.
I love that. Well, again, the Magic Castle Still Stands has 2 more showings, like Vanessa just mentioned. There's one on Friday and one on Sunday. I'll also post the information on clickorlando.com/settingthestage. Vanessa, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Brooke, for having me.